The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Tonight's episode is a peace proposal for Christianity and Judaism.
Well, welcome back to Created in the Image of God. If all goes well, God willing, and the creek don't rise, it is now December 28th. This show's being pre-recorded, which is why I'm predicting going forward that it's episode 207 airing on December 28th. I'm here in the studio with a friend who I've gotten to know over the last few years. This gentleman has spent years writing on all kinds of theological topics after a lifetime of study, most of it as a Baha'i, all of it as a seeker. And he's written a number of articles on the topic of hell, one of which caught my particular attention. And I don't know that we've had a show on hell here on Created in the Image of God, but many people believe that God created hell, so maybe it's about time we did. Welcome to the studio, David.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Wade.
Well, it's great to have you. As we always do on this show, we like to talk about, first and foremost, your creation story, right? Who were your parents? What were the circumstances into which you were brought forth? What were the forces that shaped and molded you before you took conscious thought? So that we can get to know sort of the little young lad David who was running around and get a sense of who and what you are before whatever turning point, pivot, coming of age piece of your story will come in then at the end of this first segment.
Okay, that sounds good. I was raised a Lutheran against my parents' better wishes. And my grandparents, who are both Norwegian on my father's side, insisted that as the oldest grandchild, the first grandson, that I be raised as a Lutheran, even though my father was really an atheist after being a Marine in World War II and going through hell. And my mother, raised a Catholic, was not a believer either. But they agreed that their first child would be raised a Lutheran, as my grandparents insisted. And so they would drop me off at the Lutheran church every Sunday morning in the little farm town where I grew up in Washington State and say, okay, go in and get religion. And as you might expect, that didn't really work. Although I went to church and went to confirmation classes and all the rest of it, I had way too many questions that the people there had a hard time answering. I remember at 12, my mother getting a call from the youth pastor at the church saying, David isn't welcome here any longer.
Oh, wow.
And she said, why not? And he said, he asks too many questions. So that was when I really stopped going to church at 12 and began my own spiritual search on my own, reading and attending different services of, all the faiths that I could.
Let me pause you there for a second, because I'm curious. What was that little farming town in Washington State?
Moses Lake.
You're kidding me. So I was in Bellingham, and
not too far away.
Well, it's a little hike, but
yeah.
But the person who later was actually related to me through circumstances that did my taxes for years lived in Moses Lake. So I've been there.
Yeah.
That is still a little town.
Tiny little farm town when I grew up. Yep.
Okay, so continue then. So, pray tell, what was the religious diversity available in Moses Lake? Doesn't sound to me like there would have been much.
Not a whole lot. Luckily, when I was 12, my parents moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
All right.
Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'll try to get rid of it. And Phoenix had a lot more diversity, even at that time. So I was able to find different faiths, investigate them, and discovered the Baha'i faith when I was 15. Looked into it, 3 years really before I became a Baha'i.
Well, and how did life change for you? I mean, there a lot of changes is going on between 15 and 18 anyway, but what else was changing, and what role did the Baha'i faith play in those changes?
Big question. For me, growing up in the family I grew up in, my father was an alcoholic, and I became one too early in my adolescent years. Really tried to overcome that as a teenager. Started going to AA meetings when I was maybe 16, and got sober and clean when I was 18. The Baha'i faith really helped me do that because I, read the Baha'i laws and figured out, well, if I'm going to be a spiritual person, I'm going to have to try and abide by these.
Wow. So that's kind of shocking, I guess. What I can relate. I'm tiny bit speechless because so much is going through my head, because my mother was an alcoholic. I lived with my alcoholic uncle. My sister never recovered from her alcoholism. I managed my affair with alcohol. I would say I was never really an alcoholic. Drugs were an issue at that age, and I had a little bit of a trouble saying no to them, partially because it had to be cold turkey.
Yeah.
Whereas with alcohol, I could drink, I could even have a buzz or get a little bit drunk on occasion, and it wasn't an issue. You follow me?
Yes.
Because it wasn't illegal, for one thing, and that was a huge difference way back then.
Yeah.
But it was also the Baha'i faith that finally helped me see many years later that I wasn't doing my sister or anyone else that had these issues any favors by drinking at all.
Right.
And it was really more of a sense of responsibility to everyone else that I accepted when I became a Baha'i, in terms of me getting my head around why I shouldn't be allowed to drink at all.
Right.
And part of the reason for that, this kind of gets into the main topic we're going to talk about, is Jesus talked about drinking, when he returned, and we would have the wine again when he returned. I don't want to get into unpack those symbols, but in the Old Testament in particular, you were told, you were ordered, you were commanded to come before God and to worship him at the place where he would place his names at his festivals, and to do so with rejoicing and with wine and strong drink. So it was pretty hard for me as a fundamentalist to get my head around why I should not be allowed to drink, right?
Sure.
But different ways the Baha'i faith seems like helped both of us put an end to that. So at 18 then, you were now a Baha'i and officially sober, with probably, what was that easy then at that point for you to just avoid that, given that you were in a completely new community and new focus?
It was easier. It became gradually easier, and I also gradually replaced my AA meetings with Baha'i meetings, and realized that, AA really has a focus on a higher power. And that was my focus as a Baha'i too, to really try to center myself on that higher power and understand it more and more. Well, that's one of the reasons I really began to look into the concept of hell. As a young boy going to Lutheran church, we had a hellfire and brimstone minister who scared me as a kid and said, if you're not good, you're going to burn in fire eternally. That's incredibly frightening to children. And so, at least it was to me. And so I became really interested as an adult in the whole concept, where it came from, how it originated, what it really meant.
Yeah, and what attracted me when I saw the article on hell, because we'd met and had discussions, and I even contributed a few articles to the Baha'i teachings.org site that you were editing at the time. And but this one article where you went into some of the Norse origins of hell, my name's Franson. I'm not holding it against you that you're a Norwegian, even though I'm a Swede. My father, my grandfather rather, was a deacon in the Lutheran church, in the old country. So a lot of commonality there, but unpack that a little bit for us, the sort of etymological origins of the word hell, because I'd known a little bit, where the words come from in the Bible, but I hadn't known about this other connection.
Well, the Norse myth is really interesting. And of course, that was long before Scandinavia was separated into countries like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. But the old ancient Norse myths had two places in the afterlife that they delineated. One, of course, was Valhalla. And Valhalla was the place where you went if you were a brave warrior and you died in battle. You died in a courageous mode. And hell, spelled Hel, was the place where you went if you didn't die courageously. It was part of a kingdom called Niflheim. And Niflheim was an icy cold place fed by frozen rivers of tears. So hell, which was presided over in the Norse myths by a woman also named Hel, Hel, was the place you didn't want to go. It was the place where you kind of went in shame after you died. And that mythological pagan hell slowly transferred itself into Christian theology and its vocabulary as Europe Christianized over many centuries. And of course, the Judeo-Christian tradition of hell, which was originally in the Old Testament called Hinnom or Gehenna in the New Testament, was an actual historical place. It was a garbage dump at the base of Mount Zion in a valley near the old city of Jerusalem. And that valley housed apostates, idol worshipers, etc. The rumor there was that they sacrificed their own children by fire. And so the place became known in these tales and legends as the eventual destination of the damned after death. There were constantly burning fires there. There are some historical accounts that say it was a trash heap, where all the trash from the city of Jerusalem went and burned. There were many names for places like that. Sheol in the Hebrew Bible, Hades in Greek mythology, hell in Norse mythology. All of them referred to this garbage dump in Gehenna where, this terrible landscape consumed the souls of the wicked. Then in 1604, King James, the King of England, brought together Christian priests and theologians to develop a new translation of the Bible, which we all know today as the King James Version. First published in 1611. They really tried for a decade to come up with one official Bible that pulled together all the chapters from the Koine Greek, the Hebrew, and Aramaic sources. And of course, the idea there is that they wanted to pull together all the terms for various things that differed in each of those chapters. So the term hell never appeared in the original Old or New Testament texts, but the panels of 47 men who did the King James translation replaced all the names: Gehenna, Sheol, Hinnom, Hades. The grave was another name for hell, with one term, because it was a popular Anglo-Saxon word by that point in 1600, hell, Hell.
Interesting. So one of the things that surprised me is that the word in Swedish, Hel, in modern Swedish means whole.
Yep, that's right.
And but not the hole in the ground,
Right.
complete, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've looked at modern Norwegian etymology in terms of that word and how it may have come into modern language. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I don't. I'm mercifully illiterate in Swedish and Norwegian linguistic traditions. I wish I weren't. My grandparents spoke Norwegian and didn't transmit it to me, unfortunately.
Well, one of the things I've often joked about is, you can forget about learning any of those languages unless you can carry a tune, right? They're very much sing-songy, not as much as Chinese. The meaning isn't conveyed, but they're difficult to pronounce. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start unpacking a little bit more some of these ideas of hell, what they mean, why they were used. I mean, why would God have allowed and even inspired the use of such imagery, which indeed is frightening to children? So we'll unpack that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. Right back with more of David Langness on Created in the Image of God.
Discover the world's religious traditions like never before with Ocean 2.0 Reader. Our custom ebook reader is designed for exploration and study with an immersive audio integrated reading experience and powerful research tools available on all platforms including web, Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS. Experience the benefits of immersive reading by combining ear and eye with improved comprehension and vocabulary acquisition. Our interfaith library features books from various religions, so you can have access to a wealth of knowledge. Try Ocean 2.0 Reader today and elevate your reading experience.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm your host, Wade Franson. I'm here with David Langness, lifetime student, Baha'i, and author of a number of articles on hell. We've just unpacked a little bit the etymology, the Greek, Hebrew, Sheol, talked about the Valley of Hinnom, and now let's talk about what this all means and why would God and the messengers of God use such horrifying imagery. And before I turn the mic over to you, I want to add, I do believe you and I had this conversation actually years ago now, that I came across a little book. I think it's called The Metropolis of Satan, and it's a little Baha'i book by a Baha'i author. I'll have to go grab it in the next break and make sure I get this right. But I was very encouraged actually by this little book, because in the Baha'i faith and the Baha'i teachings, hell is understood to not be literal at all, which that's very encouraging. But having said that, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, and the Guardian, who are central figures in the Baha'i faith, for those who don't know, all used the devil in a literal way as a word referring to a being, even though their teachings are, well, that being doesn't really exist. In other words, they didn't stop using the metaphor in various statements, such as that phrase, the metropolis of Satan, and terms like satanic. These words were used by these central figures, even though we intellectually know that they are metaphors. the terms were still deemed to be useful enough to use. So I wanted to sort of preface it with that, which I personally found kind of encouraging in terms of our ability to relate and have conversations with people who might believe differently from us. So rather than getting into the fact so much that they're not real, I want to talk, why those metaphors? What's the purpose of them? What's the point of having used them throughout history?
I think that's a really good thing to contemplate and consider, because obviously those metaphors are metaphors. There is no subterranean place that we go to after death called hell where we're tortured eternally. And the Baha'i teachings point that out and carefully unpack the whole concept as a metaphor. That metaphor stands for a bleak, terrible place, but what it refers to, the Baha'i teachings say, and I just love this, is the self. Hell is not a place. The Baha'i writings point out it is a condition, and it's a condition that we can experience here in this life as well as in the afterlife. In the next world. It's a place where we are overly focused on our own selfish needs and desires. It's a place where we are unaware of others and unaware of God. Unfortunately, over time, many religions have made this thing the source of great fear. And it's been used to enforce moral laws, to scare the populace, etc. But really, it is simply a metaphor. One of the things, one of the, I think, most beautiful quotes from Abdul Baha in the Baha'i writings says, when the sun of reality shed its endless bounties from the dawning point of all desires, and the world of being was lit with that sacred light from pole to pole, with such intensity did it cast down its rays that it blotted out the Stygian dark forever. That means to me that the light of the revelations of the Creator in every dispensation does away with the darkness. And everyone's experienced that. You go into a dark room, you light a match or a candle, and all of a sudden the whole room is illuminated. Certainly, that can tell us something. You can't darken a lighted room with some non-existent force of darkness, but you can illumine a dark one with just a single source of light.
Well, and I've often thought of that analogy when thinking about Satan. And I remember when I began to come to believe that the devil was not literal or not something that should be unduly fearful of, which was a transition for me. And this was before I began investigating the Baha'i faith. But it had to do with the fact that Jesus said, resist the devil and he will flee from you, right? Not slink away, right? Not be overpowered by a greater power. All you had to do was resist and he would flee. You follow me? And I began to think about that analogy of turning on a light switch and how the darkness flees instantly when you flip on the light. And then Jesus talked about Satan having no part in him, right? That he had overcome Satan and so on and so forth. So I want to read a Bible verse here. Biblical students will be familiar with this one from Philippians 2. Unity through humility is the heading in Bible Gateway. Therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. And then it starts to unpack this idea of self. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. And I'll continue with this passage here in a minute, but I want to unpack a situation in our household without naming names. There was this issue that came up that had to be resolved, and it involved a number of people having to do so. And there was a teenager involved, and the teenager was asking why we couldn't just do it like this. And doing it like that would have been very easy for the teenager. And it wasn't that anything had been done wrong. It was just a situation that had to be dealt with. There was no problem, really, just a physical, tactical circumstance in the family. And I had to try to explain, yes, that would be very easy for you. But think about what everybody else in this situation would have to do, and the effort that they would have to go through in order for that to happen. But if you take into consideration these other people and what they're doing to make it easy for you, then your ease in this situation is not the primary focus.
Right.
And while yes, this is a little bit more effort for you, it's also a little more effort for you, a whole lot less effort for 3 other people that would all have to coordinate and juggle around making it easier for you. And normally, I might have just been impatient and kind of gotten irritated with this particular teenager. But I was kind of happy with myself for patiently taking the time to sort of, let's look at the bigger picture here, right? Because this is what it's talking about. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but for the interests of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery, having been equal with God, to then make himself of no reputation, take the form of a bondservant in the likeness of men. And having been found in appearance as a man, humbling himself and becoming obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross, right? So it's taking this idea of Jesus and the Christ and what the Christ did in consideration for all the other people around him, and teaching us to adopt that attitude. So when we talk about hell, and this is where I'm coming back to you, and this idea that hell is the self, I think of a black hole. I think of, there are many Baha'i prayers that say, make of me a brilliant lamp, a shining star, and, full of radiance and radiant hearts. And I am gloomy, make me radiant is a prayer that we teach our children. That gloominess, that selfishness leads to not even light escaping in a black hole, very inward looking and self-focused.
Boy, that was an excellent explanation. Let me see if I can expand on it a bit. The great existentialist writer Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." and the even greater, in my view, existentialist philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "Hell isn't other people, hell is yourself." And that little aphorism bears some serious thinking. Hell is yourself. The Baha'i teachings have a quote that I dearly love from Baha'u'llah. It says, "Where is paradise and where is hell? The one is reunion with me capitalized, meaning God, the other thine own self." So I think, Wittgenstein came to the same conclusion that Baha'u'llah did, that hell is the insistent, grasping part of yourself that the psychologists would call the ego. Hell is what happens when darkness conquers the light inside yourself. And every person has that struggle at the center of their spiritual life. We all, as Jung said, have a shadow self, that dark side that we need to combat, to fight against, to try to counter all the time. The Baha'i teachings ask us, as all religions do, to seek the higher and more lasting realities, to develop our ability to love one another, to grow spiritually, and ultimately to transcend the self. Every imperfect soul is self-centered and thinks only of his or her own good. But once you get past that, and once you're able to love, to truly give of yourself to others, in the Baha'i faith, that's really, that centers the pursuit of the oneness of humanity. Once you're able to do that, then you are truly on your way to transcending the self and acting in a spiritual manner.
Amen to that. So why don't we flip the switch and talk about the other side of things for a moment? And we'll do this when we come back. We're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, let's talk a little bit about heaven. If you're up for that, if you're game for that.
That sounds fabulous.
Awesome. We'll be right back with more of David Langness talking about hell and now heaven when we return.
Welcome to the Royal Falcon Foundation. Our curriculum and activities inspire and train adolescents through hands-on experiences, fostering growth and empowerment. Through immersive and challenging experiences, we shape young minds to think independently and develop their leadership skills. Our programs foster new friendships and unity, shaping young leaders to tackle real-world challenges with confidence. We believe in equipping the next generation with the skills to become leaders of tomorrow. Join us at the Royal Falcon Foundation and be part of a journey that empowers, unites, and inspires. Double your impact with our matching grant. Until the end of 2025, every tax-deductible donation to the Royal Falcon Foundation, up to $1,000, will be matched dollar for dollar. Visit our website to donate now or email info@royalfalconfoundation.org for more details. Together, we can make a greater difference.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm here with David Langness, and we've gone to hell and come back, and now we're going to talk a little bit about heaven, right? So hell is a metaphor. What about heaven? Surely there's really a heaven that we're going to go, not down but up, and what's that all about?
We've all contemplated this throughout our entire lives, as have, thousands of generations before us. What comes next? What is the afterlife like? We have all these images of people playing harps and long white robes up in the clouds. Heaven really, in the Baha'i context, is not a place. It is placeless. It is that existence after this one, which Abdu'l-Baha calls the second birth, that allows us a closer access to God. It's not a place, it's a condition. This is my favorite quote from Abdu'l-Baha about heaven. He says, "For a single purpose were the prophets each and all sent down to earth. For this was Christ made manifest. For this did Baha'u'llah raise up the call of the Lord, that the world of man should become the world of God. This nether realm, the kingdom, this darkness, light, this satanic wickedness, all the virtues of heaven. and unity, fellowship, and love be one for the whole human race. For me, that is the best definition of heaven I've ever read. Unity, fellowship, and love for the whole human race. I think we're all attempting to try to make that condition alive in our own individual lives. And if we all extended that a bit to the rest of the world, think what a heavenly place this could become. Think what we could build in this world that would be a reflection of the next and its beauty.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those quotes. There are 40,000 denominations of Christianity alone. Not all of them have differentiations in their understanding of heaven and hell, but there's a wide range of ideas around that. And then you have premillennialism, postmillennialism. I belonged to a particular group that believed, yes, indeed, we were going to be building the kingdom of God on earth. And in that sense, heaven was going to be brought down here. We also did not believe we were going to heaven at all. We believed that we would be working right here on this planet, building the kingdom of God. However, we believed that we would be doing exactly that, even after having passed on to the next life, and that spirit beings would be working directly with the physical beings that would be alive in ways that were tangible and accessible, not in some ethereal influencer kind of way, if you know what I mean. So obviously the Baha'i conception of that is different. So let's unpack this a little bit for all those different beliefs and denominations out there. What do the Baha'is actually believe about the afterlife? Because it sounds like what you're describing really is a transformation of the physical planet, a transformation of our relations with each other on this earth. And indeed, I think the quote from Abdu'l-Baha was, largely referring to that, although it would also have spiritual overtones and metaphorical overtones. But what exactly does the Baha'i faith teach in terms of the afterlife and the soul?
Boy, there's a big topic and one that would require many hours, but I'll try to summarize. For me, and this is just my understanding, I encourage everyone to look at the Baha'i writings and form their own understanding. One of the main principles of the Baha'i faith is the independent investigation of truth. So I'm no preacher. This is just my own sense of things, but the Baha'i teachings say that all of us, every human being on earth, has to die and pass into a next world, into an afterlife. The Baha'i teachings also say that reprising what Christ said, that in my Father's house are many mansions, that there are multiple stages in that afterlife, that it is eternal, that we continue to grow spiritually there, and that in many ways, that afterlife reflects the reality of life here. In fact, Abdu'l-Baha says in one place that this world is only a shadow of the next world stretching out. That this physical world we inhabit now is just a mere shadow of the real, actual world, the next world. I don't pretend to understand that. I only have a vague comprehension of what those things mean, but I look forward to my own passage into that next world. I think it'll be wonderful and incredible. And the accounts I've read of people who've come back from near-death experiences verify that and say that it was very difficult for them to return to this world after seeing the next one. So I have faith that the next world is a place of great beauty, great peace, and great love.
Well, I'm going to really mangle this, but I'm going to share a story. I first heard this story by a storyteller named Max Stossel. We actually had him on the show. He's done an amazing little video, Stossel. You can look it up. It immediately attracted me when I saw it because Jesus taught that we must be born again. And the Baha'i faith has this concept of that this life is like a womb, and we are then born into the next world. And Max Stossel, and again, I don't think he came up with the story, but he tells it of two babies in a womb talking. And the first baby asks, do you think there's anything else after this? And the other baby says, nonsense. Why would you suggest that? This is all there is. Well, I would think that there's something out there, and no, there's nothing out there. Well, what if we went out? What if we could go there and find out? Well, and the other one says, well, why hasn't anyone ever come back from there, right? From the other side? And then the one baby says, well, but don't you believe in mom?
No.
And the other baby says, Mom, are you kidding me? Why would you, has anybody ever seen her? Why would you think mom exists, right? And then baby says, well, sometimes when it's really quiet, I almost feel like I can hear her and sense her. And it goes on and it talks about, what are these legs for? Well, those legs are for nothing. And how would you eat out there? The cord isn't even long enough, And so anyway, but it's actually quite a powerful image. If the babies were able to be conscious in that womb, they would have this thought, well, we're conscious where we're at now. But it could be just that simple in a way of what is next after that, being fully born again, passing on into the next life. And the metaphor there is, of course, that we are in fact developing virtues and qualities that are spiritual in nature and that are divine that you can take with you when you pass on.
Yes.
Most things that we cherish here, we can't take them with us. We won't need them.
Well, the only thing we take with us is our character, what we've developed in this life, the attributes and the spiritual characteristics that we've been able to forge in our higher nature. Once we do that, then we have, as a friend of mine says, some actual baggage to carry into the next world. My grandfather used to tell me, you'll never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. And it's true, but we do take our character with us. We take the things we've developed here, the love, the kindness, the compassion, all of those beautiful characteristics that are essentially spiritual in nature. And of course, that part of ourselves is eternal. It lasts. All the mystical traditions, in Buddhism and Sufism and the Hindu practices, in the Christian Gnostic practices, that sense of the conquering of the ego and the building of spiritual qualities in the self bring us to a higher plane in the next world.
Well, that's a wonderful high note to end on. David, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today for Created in the Image of God. There's really nothing left for us to do here in this hour, in this life, but show the sneak peek for next week. So stay tuned to the audience for the sneak peek on what you can expect next week on Created in the Image of God. And meanwhile, remember, you are created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Wade.
Hey everyone, Wade Franson here with a sneak peek for next week's show. I'm in the studio with Morgan Guyton. We just recorded our New Year's special for January 4th. Morgan, what will people learn when they join us for this wild romp through our New Year's discussion?
Yeah, we had such a great conversation about just how to use your privilege for positive purposes and how to cultivate a culture of mercy, a culture where people care about what other people are going through and are willing to use their resources to support them, you know. And yeah, we covered a lot of ground, a lot of talk about worship, about the relationship between prophets and priests, just about doing things through personal relationship, rather than arguing with strangers on the internet.
Well, and I think what this is it's almost like a New Year's revolution.
Yeah, like revolution.
That was actually a Freudian slip. I meant to say resolution.
I love New Year's revolution. I want that. Yes.
So we've just, basically we've just planted the seed for a New Year's revolution, and we will be working together in the new year. So everybody, it's the start of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. We hope to see you all there, and join us next week for this discussion. It's the start of something, or what did Lou read in his CD, New York? It's the beginning of a great adventure. We'll see you there.